The Handkerchief by Great 78.
Chapter 138. Paternity, Punishment, and Protection. It should have been a rallying moment of triumph for the crowd of the castle's defenders. The Order of the Phoenix and Dumbledore's army gathered on the steps of Hogwarts. The huge snake Nagini was dead, decapitated by an unlikely hero, Neville Longbottom. But then, Hagrid's voice broke through the celebration that bubbled through the fighters. "Harry? Harry! Where's Harry?" Draco's insides clenched. What did that mean? The wizard boy who lived no more had just been lying at Hagrid's feet. Draco needed to get downstairs to see what was happening for himself. By the time he reached the entrance hall, the fight was moving back inside the castle. Draco stood on the main staircase, frozen to the spot. Then, as he watched, a familiar pair of wizards appeared at the castle doors, fighting two Death Eaters. Blaise battled against his stepfather, Selwyn, and just behind them, Theo squared off against his own father, Tiberius Nott. Blaise shot curse after curse at Selwyn, who parried the spells easily, almost lazily. But when Draco joined the battle on the side of Blaise, Selwyn grew more flustered. His defense weakened, and his spell work became scattered. After a few moments and a few more exchanged spells, Blaise pushed with his wand one final time, and the older wizard crumpled against an empty plinth, his head knocked back onto the marble base. He stilled, blood pooling beneath his head rapidly. He was dead. Blaise turned away quickly, a fierce look in his eye, and focused his attention on Travers, the Death Eater that had come with Selwyn to capture Luna's father. As Travers was still likely hurting from his punishment after the incident at Gringotts Bank, his reaction time was slow, and Blaise had him down in a moment. Draco turned to see Theo pinned down by the elder Nott. He ran swiftly at the two of them, his foot connecting hard with the older Nott's soft underbelly. Tiberius rolled off of his son, and Theo grabbed at his own neck where his father had been pressing and squeezing moments before. Before Tiberius could properly recover, Draco shot a stinging jinx at the man's hands, causing them to swell and welt instantly. Nott dropped his wand and began to writhe, wringing his hands together as he lay curled on the floor. Draco helped Theo to his feet, putting his arm around the wizard to help him stand. But Theo nodded and turned to his father, a glint in his eye. "Of course, the two of you would be together. A real match made in heaven. Two pussies, trying to decide who's going to be on the bottom, is that it?" Nott wheezed at the two of them, where they stood shoulder to shoulder. Theo sneered down at his father. "I hope that if you manage to live through today, and you go to Azkaban, you get a particularly nasty dickhead as a cellmate. Just a real meaty fuck who tears you from limb to limb, and then calls the guards to put you back together every time, so that he can do it again." "Big words from a Nazi boy like you," sneered Tiberius. His red and swollen hands began feeling the ground next to him, searching for his wand. "You know what? I always thought when I got the chance I would have a lot of things to say to you. A lot of things that I wanted to do to you to make you hurt, to make you piss yourself, to make you scream like you always made me scream as a child." Theo's eyes flashed angrily in the pre-dawn light of the entrance hall. "But it turns out I really don't even feel like wasting my breath." Theo raised his wand and made a sharp, slashing motion, drawing his wand diagonally and then up. A gash appeared in the elder Nott's torso. A reel of blood and bile and mucus and innards fell, splashing onto the floor next to the wizard. Tiberius looked down, perplexed and shocked, his expression barely changing as the life left him, and he fell back, dead. Theo bent closer over his father, and for a moment seemed almost to want to reach out and touch his father's face. Instead, he drew his hand back and spat at the dead wizard. "Oh, look," Theo said, his voice momentarily thick with emotion. "Turns out I did make the wanker piss himself." Theo turned back to Draco, his jaw set as if waiting for an admonition for his actions. It did not come. Draco placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "It's okay, mate. It's over," Draco said. Theo nodded once, wiping away the tear that had escaped his eyes. He took a deep breath, flashed Draco a heavy look, capped off with a resigned smile, and turned around to fight an imperious ministry witch. Draco looked around wildly. In the few minutes since he'd been here, the fight had grown exponentially. The earlier fighters had been joined by even more witches and wizards, and also by centaurs, whose arrows and hooves pierced the Death Eaters and their allies. Tiny house elves ran pell-mell around the entrance hall. Draco spotted Winky and then, amazingly, Creature. Robed in a white tea towel and wearing a golden locket, the ancient elf used a knife to slash at the ankles of Rookwood and McNair. Draco allowed a small bubble of laughter to escape him as the battle unfolded. The bleeding McNair was bodily tossed across the room by Hagrid, and was immediately set upon by the reddish centaur, Ronan. An angry and frustrated growl behind him was revealed to be Fenrir Greyback, using a borrowed wand against a fiercely fighting Ron Weasley and Neville. As he watched, the Gryffindors gained the upper hand, and the bloodied, mangled werewolf lay still at last. Ahead, Draco spotted the man he wanted to fight the most, dueling with the Hogwarts Charms Professor, the diminutive Professor Flitwick. He charged ahead, casting a full-body bind at Anton Dolohov, which glanced off of his shield charm. Undeterred, Draco stood next to Flitwick and cast non-verbal curse after curse. Flitwick turned, a bit surprised by Draco's presence, still casting a shield charm. "Mr. Malfoy?" he asked, curiously, as though Draco fighting alongside him, of all things, was the most interesting thing happening in Hogwarts right now. "Dolohov killed Remus, and he would have killed Hermione if given the chance," Draco yelled vehemently to his old professor. Flitwick seemed to accept this as reason enough, and the two wizards together turned their attention back to their prey. Within a matter of a minute, Dolohov lay dead on the ground. Flitwick nodded his approval firmly at Draco, and moved away to fight another. Halfway across the hall, a red-haired wizard was staring at him, a mixture of anger and disbelief and something else clouding his features. Ronald Weasley simply held his gaze for a moment, then gave one quick nod, his mouth still set in dislike. Draco nodded back and turned quickly. His eyes caught a flash of blonde hair. His parents, neither of them fighting, hurrying through the crowd, avoiding the skirmishes and scuffles around them. "Draco! Draco! Draco!" they both shouted, whipping their heads back and forth as they searched amongst the fighters. Draco hurried over to them, watching with approval as the two bespectacled Weasleys, Percy and Arthur, dropped thick Ness to the ground. "Mum, what are you doing inside the castle? You need to get out." Draco cast a wary eye at his father. But it was his father who answered him first. "Quickly, Draco! We all need to get out of here and apparate away. Everything is going to hell. The Dark Lord—" With that, his eyes cut to the back of the Great Hall, and Draco turned to see Voldemort, fighting at least 3 people at once. The Dark Wizard looked manic, frenzied. "I'm not leaving. I'm fighting," Draco said firmly. "I know," Narcissa said, her voice low with pride and fear. "You're doing the right thing." She grasped his arm and squeezed. A loud, familiar cackle caught all of their attentions, and the 3 of them looked to one side of the Great Hall. Bellatrix had just killed a wizard who lay at her feet, and was now confronted by 3 young witches. Draco watched in horror for only a second, as his witch battled his aunt alongside 2 of her friends. The red hair of Ginny Weasley and the blonde curls of Luna Lovegood flew around fiercely, but were no match for the vociferous tumult of Hermione's brown waves. Draco started towards the 3, ready to join in the battle. He almost expected his mother to pull him back, but to his surprise, she was going along with him towards Bellatrix, an angry expression fixed upon her face. Instead, it was Lucius's hand that tried to stay them both. Mother and son shook him off, but were too late. Someone else had reached Bellatrix first. "Not my daughter, you bitch!" Molly Weasley pushed the 3 girls aside, throwing off her cloak and drawing her wand from her robes swiftly. "Out of my way!" Her wand seemed to slash and spin with a mind of its own, sending spell after spell at the grey-toothed witch. Bellatrix's amusement at the plump witch's entrance into the fight faded quickly, replaced by outrage and ire. Spells and curses charged between the 2, who seemed evenly matched. A circle of white-hot heat formed beneath the 2 as they fought. Students tried to intervene, to help Mrs. Weasley, but she screamed at them to stay back. "What will happen to your children when I've killed you?" cackled Bellatrix, stepping with surprising nimbleness from foot to foot as she avoided the red-haired woman's curses. "When Mummy goes the same way as Freddie! You will never touch our children again!" Molly Weasley roared back, redoubling her efforts in her anger. Bellatrix threw back her head in laughter, and Draco watched in amazement as a non-verbal curse from Molly Weasley hit the evil witch directly in the chest. Her expression of sinister glee was frozen to her face, and then changed. A brief look of panic slashed its way into her eyes, but only for a moment. In a matter of a second, she had collapsed, dead, to the ground. A blood-curdling, soul-fracturing scream sounded from across the great hall. All eyes turned at the sound to find Slughorn, Shacklebolt, and McGonagall all thrown backwards like rag dolls, Voldemort standing between them, watching as his trusted confidant, his most fervent admirer, fell dead. Draco suddenly became aware that most of the fighting had stopped. The majority of the Death Eaters that had followed their master into the fight and had not run away had been killed or badly injured enough to be captured. It had come down to only Bellatrix and Voldemort, and Bellatrix was gone. Voldemort now turned his fury on Molly Weasley, and Draco and Narcissa both cast non-verbal shield charms to protect her. Across the room he witnessed Ron Weasley, Mr. Weasley, and several others do the same. But one voice called out the spell loudly, a voice familiar at once to anyone who had spent years in classrooms and across Quidditch pitches from the wizard. "Protego!" yelled Potter. Everyone froze where they stood. A flash of movement some 40 or so feet away caught Draco's eye, and he saw him. Somehow, in some way, Potter was alive, and standing in the middle of the room. "What?" Draco whispered aloud. "Narcissa, what did you do?" It was Lucius who asked this. Draco whipped his head around to look into his mother's eyes. "I told you, I needed to be close to fulfill my promise to her." In his mind, a flash of a memory. Kneeling over a body, lying on the ground in the dark forest, a hand reaching out, touching the chest of Potter, feeling a heart race under fingertips. A quiet question, then a whispered answer. A voice, high and cold, asking from a distance if the wizard was alive. And the lie, echoing across the forest clearing. "He is dead!" The memory faded. Around the mole, voices were taking up the call that Potter was alive. But just as quickly as the shout started, they stopped. It was as though everyone recognized at once what was about to happen. "I don't want anyone else to try and help," Potter called out, and Draco knew then that this was it. Potter had been accepting help this entire time, both help that he knew about and help from unknown and unexpected places. Now it was just the two of them. No Horcruxes, no Hermione or Dumbledore or Bellatrix. No Sword of Gryffindor arriving at the last possible minute. "It's got to be like this. It's got to be me." Draco remembered Dumbledore's thoughts from the memory of Snape. Voldemort had to be the one to kill Potter, and clearly Voldemort thought he had killed the young wizard earlier. Therefore it stood to reason that, no matter what else, Potter had to be the one to try and kill Voldemort. And that made Draco very afraid. Because gripped in Potter's hand was not the Sword of Gryffindor, or some powerful new combination of Ollivanders. Potter did not have the might of an unbeatable wand, or the power of Horcruxes. He wasn't possessed of the immortality of a Philosopher's Stone, and he wasn't the descendant of a Hogwarts founder with the venom of an ancient basilisk behind him. The twin cores of the broken and abandoned phoenix feather wands mattered no more. He was armed only with a stick of hawthorn wood and unicorn hair, a wand that had struggled against unforgivables and had never produced a Patronus. It was a wand chosen for a nervous, brash, and excited 11-year-old boy who had been and would be again beaten and scarred by his own father. A boy who was crucioed by his aunt and the Dark Lord. A boy who made the terrible choice of accepting the Dark Mark, who allowed Death Eaters and a rabid werewolf into the school, who kept secrets of prophecies and swords from those he loved. It wasn't going to be enough. "The true master of the wand will be disarmed, and it is his wand that shall prevail." Dumbledore had been disarmed, whilst lying dead, helpless and defenceless, in his crypt. His wand, the Elder Wand, was about to prevail. It was nearly over. Voldemort was sneering at Potter now, and the two began moving slowly, closer, nearer, and yet maintained their distance, walking in a slow circle around each other. "You! The boy who survived by accident, because Dumbledore was pulling the strings." "Accident, was it? When my mother died to save me? Accident when I decided to fight in that graveyard? Accident that I didn't defend myself tonight and still survived and returned to fight again? Accidents!" Voldemort scoffed at him. "Accident and chance, and the fact that you crouched and snivelled behind the skirts of greater men and women, and permitted me to kill them for you. You won't be killing anyone else tonight. You won't be able to kill any of them, ever again. Don't you get it? I was ready to die to stop you from hurting these people, but you did not!" interjected Voldemort. "I meant to, and that's what did it. I've done what my mother did. They're protected from you. Haven't you noticed that none of the spells you put on them are binding? You can't torture them. You can't touch them. You don't learn from your mistakes, Riddle, do you?" By now, Potter had traded places with Voldemort in the room, and the Dark Lord stood between Draco and Potter. For the first time, Draco was able to see Potter's face. His eyes, normally a plain green, were incandescent with a fervour that Draco recognized. He had seen Potter like this many times over the years. In Quidditch matches, at Dueling Club, their second year, across the tiled floor of a wet lavatory before uttering a curse at him, and again, leaning over Draco as Draco tried to bleed to death on that same lavatory floor. "You dare!" It was Potter's turn to sneer. "Yes, I dare. I know things you don't know, Tom Riddle. I know lots of important things that you don't. Want to hear some, before you make another big mistake?" Voldemort did not answer immediately, and Potter's eyes flared once more. "Is it love, again? Dumbledore's favourite solution, love, which he claimed conquered death? Though love did not stop him from falling from the tower and breaking like an old waxwork. Love which did not prevent me stamping out your mudblood mother like a cockroach, Potter. And nobody seems to love you enough to run forward this time and take my curse. So, what will stop you dying now, when I strike?" taunted Voldemort. They had circled once more, and Draco watched in revulsion as the dark wizard seemed to stretch out his sibilant consonants in a serpentine way. "Just one thing," said Potter confidently, and Draco's eyes were drawn surreptitiously to Hermione, who stood fixed to the spot about 15 feet away, not far from where Bellatrix had been killed by Molly Weasley. Hermione looked at him, her perfect copper eyes filled with tears. She, like him, knew that this was likely the end. As they looked at each other, her throat convulsed in a fresh, silent sob, and new tears escaped her eyes. She brought her hands together, the fingers of her right hand pressing gently on her left cuff. Their unspoken gesture for, "I love you. I'm thinking of you. I'm holding you in my heart." He touched his chest. "I've always loved you, why? I love you so much. I'll do whatever I can to protect you, no matter what happens next." She closed her eyes as more tears fell, and she reached for Ginny Weasley's hand. The red-haired witch, her own cheeks glassy with tears, looked up to see Draco watching them. She nodded at him and squeezed Hermione's hand. Draco nodded back grimly and pushed his spear down.
Thank you for listening to this chapter of The Handkerchief by Great 78.